solicitor's earnings, while Sandra was still in art school. They had worked hard, making many of the repairs themselves, to create their vision of a home, not realizing that in a few years' time they would be sitting on a property gold mine. For the town houses on Fournier Street were Georgian, built by the French Huguenot silk weavers who had come to London's Spitalfields to escape persecution in Catholic France. The weavers had done well for themselves for a time, their looms clicking in their spacious lofts, the women congregating on the front stoops in their lustrous taffeta gowns, while their canaries sang in the cages they carried as marks of status. But cheap calico imports from India had threatened the weaver's livelihood, and the invention of the mechanized loom had sounded its death knell. New waves of immigrants had followed the Huguenots, the Jews, the Irish, the Bangladeshis, the Somalis, but none had prospered as the Huguenots had done, and the houses had sunk into a long, slow decay. Until now. Despite the recession, the city was moving relentlessly eastwards, encroaching on Spitalfields, bringing a new wave of immigrants. But these were yuppies with fat pocketbooks who were snapping up the houses and warehouses of the old East End, pushing the lower-income residents out as they came in. For the present bled into the past, and the past into the present, always. And to Sandra it seemed particularly so in the East End, where the years accumulated in layers like the fabrics on her board. Sandra sighed and rubbed her fingers over the scrap of peacock blue taffeta she held in her hand, contemplating its position in the overall design of her collage. It was inevitable, she supposed, change, and she had friends now on both sides of the economic divide. And if anything, she owed her ability to make her living as an artist to those on the upper end of the scale. She glanced at the pile of fabric scraps under the loft casement. Charlotte lay nestled among the silks and voiles, drawn like a cat to the pool of sunlight. She had settled there when she tired of a long and one-sided conversation with her favourite stuffed elephant. Charlotte, like her mother before her, would have nothing to do with dolls. Graceful as a cat, too, her little daughter, even asleep with her thumb in her mouth, thought Sandra. At almost 3, Charlotte had held on to her thumb-sucking a bit too long, but Sandra found herself reluctant to deprive her precocious child of a last vestige of infant comfort. Her frustration with the collage in progress momentarily forgotten, Sandra grabbed a sketchbook and pencil from her work table. Quickly she blocked out the spill of fabric, the small French panes of the casement, the curve of Charlotte's small body in dungarees and T-shirt, the delicate and slightly snub-nosed face framed by the mass of toffee-coloured curls. The sketch cried out for colour, and Sandra exchanged her number 2 for a handful of coloured pencils pulled from a chipped silver Jubilee mug, a flea market treasure kept for its accidental misspelling of the Duke of Edinburgh's name. Red for the dungarees, pink for the T-shirt, bright blues and greens for the puddled silks, warm brown for the polished floorboards. Absently, she went back to the silks, her hand attempting to reproduce the half-formed memory of an intricate silk pattern she had seen. It had been sari silk, like those spilled on her floor, but an unusual pattern. Tiny birds hand-woven into the apple-green fabric. She'd asked the girl who wore it where it had come from, and the child had answered in soft, halting English, saying her mother had given it to her. But when Sandra asked if her mother had bought it here in London, the girl had gone mute and looked frightened, as if she'd spoken out of bounds. And the next time Sandra visited, she had been gone. Sandra frowned at the recollection, and Charlotte stirred, as if unconsciously responding. Afraid she would lose her opportunity to capture the tableau, Sandra reached for her camera and snapped. She checked the image, nodding as she saw Charlotte's sleeping face framed by silk, timeless now.